Hello, hello, hello. Come on in the room. It's Tuesday, and you know what Tuesday means. Tuesday, come on, is all about the inside scoop. You want the inside scoop? Are you ready for the inside scoop? I don't know. Come on in the room. I get so excited about being able to share a little bit of myself, a little more of myself with you, letting you know the perspective of who I am and what it is that I'm standing for, letting you know what is really going on the inside of this mind, the mind that never stops going. You hear me? I am very excited tonight to talk to you about midpoint moments. Midpoint moments. If you are tuning in live or on the replay, go ahead and just drop in the comments and let me know what you believe midpoint moments are. When you hear midpoint moments, what comes to your mind? I want to know. I want to hear from you. Even if you're on a replay, go ahead and drop in the comments midpoint moments, the first thing that pops in your mind. So, as you all know, I am Mary. I am Marquita Green, and I am a source strategist. And I specifically help wives and mothers to reconnect with their purpose. I am so passionate about seeing women who are wives and or mothers. You don't have to be both. They're not mutually exclusive. One or the other, or I should say they are. Helping and making sure that we're able to walk in our purpose. A lot of times, because of our spouses, because of our children, we have so many things going on that we tend to put ourselves on the back burner. We tend to forget about ourselves and we tend to neglect ourselves. I'm here to say that you can have it all, that you can still be a good wife, you can still be a good mom, and you can still go ahead and do what it is that you're called and created to do. So that's what we're talking about today. Today, we are talking about midpoint moments. So my husband is on the road. Well, he's in New Jersey, I should say. He was driving up last night from Florida to Pennsylvania. And one of the last stops he said, I'm making my last stop of the night. And it was the Chesapeake House. The Chesapeake House is off of 95. It is a rest stop, a rest area. So trucks can stop there, people can stop, you can use the restroom, you can get food, you can do just the normal run-of-the-mill stuff that you would do if you're taking a break while you're driving down the road, right? And so immediately when he said that he was at the Chesapeake House, I immediately thought about my experiences at the Chesapeake House. So I've been sharing a little bit of my life with you all over the past couple of weeks, and tonight will be no different. As you know, or may not know, but I am the product of a divorced couple. So my parents divorced when I was the ripe age of 2. And I was born in Maryland. I was living in Maryland. But then when I was 2, my parents split. And when they split, my mother moved back home to Philadelphia, where she is from, and she took me with her. That my dad stayed in Maryland. So what that means is that I was kind of going back and forth, bouncing back and forth between 2 households. That is a privilege, I will say. As a divorce attorney, as a family law attorney, I do see a number of families that are split, that are separated, a number of homes that are kind of destroyed. And I see how that impacts the child. I see that there are a lot of difficulties in trying to even figure out, where is a child going to sleep at night? Where is a child going to go to school? Who is the child going to be with for special holidays? Who is the child going to be with over the summer and special breaks? That is all very sensitive and stressful stuff. It's very, very stressful. And sometimes it's handled well and sometimes it's not. In my personal case, I can honestly say that my parents handled it pretty well. So from Philadelphia to Maryland, they had a system on how often I would go visit my dad, how long I would stay, all of that good stuff, child support, whatever needed to be done, they figured it out. And they figured it out without the court system. You hear me? My parents figured it out without having to get Uncle Sam involved, without having to get the court systems involved. So I don't know who this is for, but whatever your situation is, it is possible to resolve your family issues inside the family. It's not always necessary to get people involved. Now, I know that may sound kind of contradictory. I'm saying I'm a family law attorney, and here I am saying you may not need to get one involved. Every situation is different. Some situations need it, some situations require it. However, my parents' situation did not. And so hopefully you've picked up the cue point, but the Chesapeake House was the exchange point, right? That was the exchange point where one parent would drop me off and another parent would pick me up. And so in this exchange point, it made me think of this midpoint moment. It made me think of the moment where there's a midpoint, an intersection, and what is happening. And in this midpoint moment, there's an exchange that takes place. And so my midpoint moments were the Chesapeake House, where my mother was dropping me off to my father, and then my father was dropping me back off to my mother. That was a midpoint moment in my childhood that has had a lasting impact. I will always remember that the Chesapeake House was the place where we did the exchange. It was the place where I had to take off the rules of my mom's home and I had to embrace the rules of my dad's home. It was the place where whatever extra goodies I had gotten at my dad's house, whatever extra free time or extra TV time or whatever I had gotten, I had to go back and do a midpoint check-in, do an intersection of mindset of what was going to happen when I got back to my mom's house. I had to remember the schedule. I had to remember the regimen. I had to remember the systems that were set in place, because each location had a different set of, each location had a very different set of rules and requirements. And so as my husband mentioned the Chesapeake House last night, it just made me think of these midpoint moments that we have in life and how we don't forget them. As soon as he said it, I was like, wow, these midpoint moments are triggered in my mind to say that something happens whenever the term Chesapeake House comes up. I'm reminded of this exchange of information that took place. I'm reminded of a shifting that took place in me. I'm reminded even of the fact that my parents weren't together. And so I may not have understood that as a 7-year-old, but now that we as in me, I'm in my 40s, I'm able to go back and say, wow, something that happened over 30 years ago still resonates with me. And so the question is, what are the midpoint moments in your life? And when you think about those midpoint moments, how have those moments of intersection, those moments of transition, how have they impacted your life? Whether they were moments from your parents that were kind of placed upon you, or whether they were moments in your adulthood that you're just learning to roll with the punches with, or that you're now putting onto your own children. These are very important because they have long-term lasting effects based on the example that I just gave. But I wanted to share that because this is also the month of July. And if you know about the calendar year, which I know we all know about the calendar year, we are literally just at the midpoint of the 2021 calendar year. So we are just at the point where the first half of the year is behind us, and now we're getting geared up for the finish, the finality of 2021. So my question to you is, in this midpoint moment, where are you? Where are you with your hopes? Where are you with your dreams? Where are you with your visions? Have you begun to think about what this midpoint moment looks like in your life? when you think about the fact that you came into 2021 with dreams. You said, I'm going to start a business. You said, I'm going to get my marriage back on track. You said, I'm going to get my kids in these activities. You said, I'm going to lose weight. You said, I'm going to eat healthy. There are so many different goals that we set for ourselves at the start of the year. The question is, have we taken the time to have a midpoint check-in? Have we taken the time to sit back in this midpoint moment and say, this is where I am. What do I need to shake? What do I need to shift? Remember, I mentioned at the Chesapeake House, I had to shift my mindset. In that same way, in this month of July, this is the perfect time for all of us to shift our mindset, to shift our thinking, to shift gears and say, this is where I want it to be. This is where I am, and this is what needs to change in order for me to get to the end goal. Whatever it is that you set out to do at the beginning of the year, you still have time to do it. And so I wanted to take time to share that with somebody tonight, because a lot of times we think, oh my gosh, I've just wasted 6 months. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I only have 5.5 months left. That's okay. And so maybe in this midpoint moment, this is the time to do a shift and say, okay, I know where I am, and now I'm going to create a new plan to go forward. Sometimes it's not about getting rid of the goal. It's about adjusting the goal. And so, for instance, maybe somebody said, I want to save $1,000 in the year of 2021. And maybe you haven't saved any money, or maybe you've only saved $100. That's okay. So we don't have to give up the goal. We can still push towards it, see whether or not we can achieve the balance. And if not, then we shift. Remember, in this midpoint moment, in these moments in life, there's a shifting that takes place. And so exactly, you have to make the adjustments and be willing to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do to change it. And so that could look like saying, I'm not going to save $1,000 and I'm going to save 500. That's okay. That is totally fine. But we have to give ourselves permission to make the adjustments that are needed. We have to give ourselves permission to do a shift in the mindset that needs to be done. And a lot of times we don't want to do it. For those who have followed me, you know that there's not a whole lot I can do without sharing a bit of scripture. And so I'll do that tonight too. As I was about to log on, I was reminded of the scripture in Habakkuk 2:2. Write the vision and make it plain on tablets so that those who see it can run with it. And then it goes into verse 3 saying, for the vision will not tarry, but at an appointed time it shall come to pass. I just paraphrase, but that's essentially almost verbatim what it says. I'm sharing that because it's very important that in these midpoint moments that we're writing it down, that we're getting a planner, that we're getting some type of journal, we're getting something and we're writing it out so that we can visibly see what it is that we're pushing for, and then we can go running at it with full speed. We don't want to say, okay, I had these thoughts in my head and I knew how I was going to meet the goal back in January, back in February, maybe even in April. But I understand I skipped a month. But I understand that I had these thoughts in my mind back then when I set the plan. But have they been written? And have they been placed in front of you where you could visibly see them each and every day? Were you able to look at the scale and know what your starting weight was? And are you checking that with markers consistently to see where you're going? These are just some of the ways that we get back on track, that we get refocused, and that we shift and we make the adjustments that we need to make. And so my encouragement is to go ahead and write it out. Whatever it is that you wanted to accomplish in this midpoint moment, go ahead and write out what you wanted to see happen and how you wanted to see it happen. It's no longer where we need to make excuses and say, we have to do this for our spouse, or we need to do this for our children. In fact, in order for me to be on this live tonight, I had to tell my girls who were at track practice, which is supposed to be 5:30 to 7:30, which often goes later, that tonight you have to leave at 7:30. And they may not have liked that, but when we create these boundaries, when we create the structure, and then when we say that this is what I'm going to do, and we make a commitment to do a thing, then we show up when we say we're going to show up, and we do what we have to do. And when we do that, we're valuing ourselves, and we're also teaching our children something. We're also teaching them values to say that sometimes there has to be a shifting. We're talking about midpoint moments, and it needs a shift, but there also has to be a balance and priorities. And so we can't put too many balls in one basket. Balance is a really hard thing, and that's a whole different topic for another day, but we can't put too many balls in one basket and then we drop everything else, which is essentially what we as women do. We put so much weight into what our spouses need. We put so much weight into what our children need. We're caregivers to our aging parents. We are taking care of siblings. We are the dumping ground, or we're just the listening ear to all of our friends and all of our co-workers and everybody else. And sometimes it begins to weigh us down. And at the end of the day, we're like, oh my gosh, where am I in the midst of it? Well, if you take the time to do a midpoint moment check-in and say, where am I in the midst of everything going on around me? Where is the place where I say, okay, I am going to find the place where I'm putting myself in the equation, and I'm figuring out what this intersection is. I'm figuring out how to intertwine myself in the midst of every other hat that I'm wearing. This is what happens in these midpoint moments. That was what the Chesapeake House experience was about. When I was being exchanged from one parent to the other, in that exchange, it's this process of thinking, what do I need to do in order to get a different result? That's what needs to happen for all of us in this month and in this season. And so I just wanted to come in and share a little bit about that. It's not always easy, but it's necessary. And it's the thing that moves us forward from where we are to where we've been. And so I've shared a number of things tonight, and I'll just do like a quick rundown. But for me, I was immediately triggered when my husband said Chesapeake House, because I was reminded of an exchange that happens. And I wanted to make sure that we as women, we as wives, we as mothers understand that there's an exchange that is required of us. It's not necessarily a physical exchange of a person, but it's an emotional change. It's a mental change that needs to happen. There needs to be an intersection of where we've been and where it is that we want to go. And we need to see where they intertwine, and in that middle is going to be where we are. The question is, if we don't identify that midpoint moment, if we don't identify that intersection, then we'll never get where we're called to be, because we're always stuck right here, or we're stuck with where we always were. And so I'm encouraging you to really take some time to understand your Chesapeake House in the natural, your Chesapeake House in the mind, your Chesapeake House in your marriage, your Chesapeake House in your parenting relationship, your Chesapeake House in your job. Figure out where you are. Where is that intersection, and what shift needs to take place in order to get you to the other side? When I was being exchanged from one parent to the other, I was literally leaving one house and going to another house. That is a good example of the old and the new, the past and the future. And so as I'm being exchanged in the middle, I'm leaving what happens here behind so that I can focus on what happens here. And that's where we need to get. But if we don't identify that midpoint moment, if we don't identify where we are in the present, then we can't go forward. And so as you're identifying that, I'm also encouraging you to go back to December or January, whenever you set your goals for the year. What is it that you wanted to accomplish? What is it that you said, I am going to do this year? I'm going to write this book. I'm going to start this blog. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to cut my hair. There was something that you wanted to do different in this year. There was some commitment that you made to yourself. I'm going to get some massages. I'm going to spend a day a month on some self-care. There was something you said that you wanted to do for you. And somewhere along the way, you got off track. My encouragement to you tonight is to go back and revisit those places and say, okay, I know where I want it to be. I see where I am now. I understand my intersection moment. And now I'm going to position myself to go forward. Now I'm going to position myself to do the very thing that I've always wanted to do. Now I'm going to position myself in order to reap the benefits that I've always wanted. So if you are looking for some support in that area, maybe you're saying, yeah, this sounds good, but I'm not quite sure what that looks like for me. I'm not quite sure where I'm supposed to start that process. It sounds easier said than done. I'm here to say that you don't have to do it on your own. I have a coaching program specifically for women who are wives and or mothers. And I would love to connect. I would love for you to connect with me so that I can help you to walk in your purpose. My goal this year is to help 40 women to reconnect with their purpose. 40 women to reconnect with their purpose. No longer do we have to live in isolation. No longer do we have to live with excuses. Sometimes we just need that extra, we just need that extra push to go forward. If that is you, then I encourage you to head on over to www.transformandsoar.com. That will show you a video of some steps that I took in order to reconnect with my purpose. It will also lead you into information to schedule a clarity call with me where I can tell you a little bit more about the SOAR strategy that I believe will help you to soar into your purpose, and then tell you more about the coaching program. So you don't have to walk it alone. This is our time. This is our opportunity to identify our midpoint moments. Identify the intersection in your life, where you've been, where you're going, and then figure out what shift needs to take place in the middle. You don't have to do it alone. All right. It's been cool chilling out with y'all on tonight. This has been the Inside Scoop. I look forward to being back next Tuesday, same place, same time. Peace.